Now let's begin. I'm here to talk about post-manufacturing merchandising and with the perspective of the buyer. How do we understand the buyer, his needs, and how do we implement that into our merchandising processes? So this is going to be my topic. I've already been introduced, so I don't think I should go into that slide again. Let me give you an agenda of the talk so you have an idea of how it's going to be structured. We're going to be understanding the paradigm shift of the export industry. If you've been here for the conference since morning, you would have heard this being the buzzword of the day, paradigm shift. Everyone's talking about something new happening in the industry or a new evolution that is taking place. We're going to be addressing this today and the emerging role of the merchandisers in this new scenario. After that, we're going to be doing an analysis of the various business stakeholders, and of course our stakeholders in the business are the end consumer, the buyer, and of course us, the manufacturer. And this entire session is going to be, we have to consider ourselves as the merchandisers or the exporters and take the views from that perspective. And then I'm going to be giving you some practical tools and formats, and of course a short Q&A session. Before we begin, because it's going to be about post-manufacturing, I just want to be very sure that we're on the same page when we talk about the terms pre-production. I mean, there's nothing much to say because processes that are all done prior to the bulk production process are known as the pre-manufacturing stage. This would include our sample, the research, the sales sampling, and the sourcing of the material. All of that would come under the pre-production. Are we on the same page? Yeah? Great. Then the post-production is this is what we are going to be concentrating on, is the processes that are done after bulk production, which would start from, just for the ease of understanding, we're going to be talking about post-packing stage. So once the goods are packed, then we're going to analyze the role of the merchandiser and how he can add value to the process. And talking about value, we've had a session in the morning by Mr. Singh about value creation. Can anyone tell me, what do you understand as value? When you talk about value, what do you think value is all about? Anyone? We have to make this interactive, otherwise it's not going to work. Okay, anyways, value is anything that the customer is willing to pay for. So we have to change our perspective towards what the customer thinks is important for him. If we are doing certain processes which we feel are important, but at the end of the day the customer is really not going to pay for it, that's actually an added cost to our entire process. So we have to keep this aspect of value from the customer's perspective always in our mind, because this is what impacts every single thing that we do in all the processes, right from the beginning of taking the order to the moment the goods leave the factory. And there are three very important aspects of quality, cost, and delivery that comprises of value. Let's talk about merchandising. I'm sure at least you can give me the definition of merchandising. Follow up? Yeah.
Merchant.
A merchant, exactly. Now, merchandising comes from the word merchant or shopkeeper. I mean, this sounds really vague for us because today merchandising means so much more than simply a shopkeeper, right? We are not people sitting in a store or a grocery store. We're not selling goods like that. But the point is that the true meaning of the word and the function of a merchandiser lies in this word. So let's look at the traditional definition of merchandising is to arrange the right products in the right price at the right time to the consumer. But this aspect of before that I've underlined is that we have to anticipate what the consumer wants, what the buyer wants, even before they know it, right? Because if they know exactly what they want, and if we give something, we're already old, we're redundant, there's no use for us. So to understand merchandising from that aspect is what we're going to be focusing on. And what we do in our manufacturing industry largely comes back to this definition of merchant. So which we will see. Now again we see this new age of merchandising which everyone's talking about, this paradigm shift. And what we're going to be understanding is that the three sections of how merchandising has changed and evolved over time. The first one is the evolution. We'll understand why it has changed, how it has changed, and what are the impacts of that on our working processes, then the flexibility that this evolution, reacting to this evolution needs flexibility, and what kind of opportunities that it opens to us as business stakeholders. So beginning with the evolution of the apparel industry, a very basic question. Again, I'm going to keep asking you questions till you start answering me, right? I'm not going to stop. So the first thing is that over the years, have any of you experienced any changes in the field of merchandising? Do you think so? You have, right? And can you tell me just very briefly, what do you think are the changes? What did we do earlier? What are we doing now that is different? You know, what are the new expectations? What are your changes? What do you feel?
It's more interactive.
Correct, it's interactive. Anything else?
Fast.
Sorry?
Fast.
Fast, exactly. It's very fast. Anything else?
We are more project-oriented.
Profit-oriented, yes.
Profit as it is project-oriented. Initially, it was the buyer's ways to give us the product. Right now, it's being designed and we just portray our collections.
Yes.
So it's a way ahead more than the buying.
Correct, correct. Very good, great. So we all know and we've understood and we've experienced that merchandising is undergoing a huge change. So this change is our new thinking paradigm, and there has been this drastic evolution in this field. And a very basic reason for this is the increase of digital technology, right? We have the internet now, we have various different modes of communication. A very easy example would be that even 15 years or 10 years before today, when we had to talk to a buyer, you would only email, right? And if they would not reply, you would keep emailing, or if we would not reply, they would keep emailing. And then the emails would get nasty, and then we'd have to get, hire people in the management involved, and that was how it happened. But today, you can't escape, right? So if you, as an exporter or an export merchandiser, if you don't respond to what the buyer needs, what are they going to do? They're going to Skype with you, right? And they're going to immediately call you, they're going to FaceTime with you, or they're going to do something. So there's no way of escaping. Why? Because the world is becoming so small. We are now literally living in a global village. Everything is globalized. So that definitely has led to a huge impact on the way we function. We no more can just deal with what was enough 5 years or 10 years down the line. Another point of this is that merchandising has transformed into a very complex role. I think most of you have really hit the nail, because you said it's not only about what they give. It's not that they just give us tech packs, we execute the tech packs and that's done. No, if you want to delve into business, if you want to really open up new avenues of business, what do you have to do? You have to be proactive. You have to be able to, give them options which can click. Because that's how they will realize, oh, this person is able to do even this. And they're not going to assume. You can't base your business on assumptions in today's date. So let's talk about the difference between a traditional approach of what we used to do earlier in respect to, this is not only in respect to export merchandising, this is with respect to our entire export industry, the apparel industry. The first is, it's a textbook approach. We had, or if you have studied in NIFT or any of these institutes, you would have a merchandiser does A, B, C, D, right? So you have your sampling, you have your prototype, you have your SMS samples, then you have your fit samples, you have your pre-production meeting, you have your PPM sample, and That's the way we work. And close the book, your order is shipped. But do you think we can work like that, or do you think we work like that in today's day? It's not happening. Right? So right now, what we need, it's an ownership-based approach. You always use this buzzword. Every merchandiser says that this style or this order is my baby. Right? Raise your hands. How many of you use this word? Right? It's your baby. Now, if it's your baby, that means to say you have to take ownership of that baby. Right? Or what are you going to do? You're going to just give it food and let it, just kind of grow up on its own? It's going to grow wild. And what is wild in our industry? It's bad quality, it's non-conformation to certain standards, it's not being able to have sustainable practices, right? So if you are not there to nurture that baby and help that style or the buyer or the account grow, it's really not going to happen anymore, right? Another way is an execution-oriented approach. As the lady rightly said, is that we would get a tech pack, We would understand it, analyze it, make our sample, and that's about it. But what about a proposition-based approach? Today, all of you, or almost all of you, have a design cell in your export house. I'm guessing you make your own research, propositions, take your collections to the buyers. So it's the need of the hour. You have to do that. If you don't do that, you can't wait for just simply tech packs to keep coming to you, right? Again, you have a reactive approach. A very good example of a reactive approach would be that suppose suddenly you send something to the buyer and you get a claim, right? Or you send a sample to the buyer, you know it's not right somewhere, but you just say, take a chance, and you just send it. And then you get comments on that. But so what did you do at the end of the day? You wasted your time, you wasted the buyer's time, and you got the same comments that any one of you with a little bit of common sense or application of your mind would have caught way before it even going to the buyer, correct? And you lose credibility in that term. So what you need to do is to be proactive, is to, even if it's not within your merchandising functions, but certain functions which relate to your merchandising, if you are proactive enough to go and offer a trigger, raise a flag, that is more than enough in today's environment. Then again, this is a very interesting aspect. First, we've always been B2B. What is B2B? It's business to business. We as an exporter or a vendor, our clients are the buyer. They're a business. But what we need to understand is that it's not only this business that is going to get the product. It is the end consumer who is going to be wearing that product which you are manufacturing. So if you don't take into consideration what that end consumer needs, what he wants from you, and orient your business according to that, it's going to be a very tough way to be sustainable in today's world. So there's a change of approach required. Again, it was production-centered. I don't think I need to go into details for all of that, but we had a very production-centric approach. Now we are very consumer-centric and huge profit margins. In the 80s or even in the 90s when you did merchandising, no one calculated cost breakdowns. Many companies, even in India, you'd look at a piece and say, ye kitne mein bikega? Right? That's how it used to happen. And we would just give a 2 times or 3 times or 4 times upcharge, and that was it. But today, you have IE departments, you have very detailed SAMs and breakdowns, operational breakdowns of the styles, and only then, and in fact, I'm sure you know that even buyers such as Gap have internal IE teams. So even before they decide to give or choose you as a vendor, they have done their homework and they know exactly what cost would be feasible to achieve a particular style on. So if you send something completely out of the moon, they're going to catch you immediately over there as hungry for money, or and again, it's the issue of credibility. And then you had one very important point which Mr. Singh picked up in his session on value creation, which I added into the slide, is the last one. We always focused on economies of scale. That was always our orientation of this industry. But now what is needed is the economy of flow, speed, agility, right? We talk about lean manufacturing, and he talked about the evolution of the 3 centuries that passed by. He said 19th century was craft oriented, right? The 20th century was again mass manufacture. And what did he talk about the 21st century being? It's lean, it's agile. So you can see that within a century, everything's changing. The paradigms are shifting. So in this competitive environment, first of all, we've understood that something has changed. We've understood that we need to change as well. But the point is, how do we address this change? What do we do in our merchandising that can really address the changes that are taking place around us? And the second question is, how can one distinguish oneself and leave a lasting impact on the buyer? Right? You have so many people, so many exporters, everyone vying for the same big names in the business, right? But how can you prove to them that, hey, we're the ones, we want your business, give your business to us? That's the question. Can any of you give any idea or throw any light or give me a few points on how do you think you can distinguish your buyers? Or how do you do it in your company? How do you make yourselves attractive to the buyers? How do you do it? You create a USP, correct. What else do you do?
We give options to the buyer.
Yeah.
Correct.
A cost segregation. Okay, correct.
No market
Yeah.
research, what is selling.
Exactly, exactly. So these all, what are all of these? These are proactive approaches that you take the ownership or the onus to do. This is nowhere in the merchandising textbook. So now the key to addressing, as you all said very rightly, the key to addressing this paradigm shift is, yoga. I'm asking you to do yoga? No, really not. What we're talking about is bring in workplace flexibility, bring in adaptability in your processes, bring in agility in your processes. That is what is needed to address this changing paradigm shift. Do you agree with me on this point? Right? Now, let's talk about the flexibility of the process. So we spoke about the evolution. We have understood that it's evolved. We've understood that we have to address this evolution. And how do we address it is through flexibility. So let's divide our work as merchandisers into flexibility. Research, we need a strong design team. You need someone who can understand exactly the pulse of the industry, the pulse of everyone, and go for that. The second is prototyping. As she rightly mentioned, you need to do costing in multiple fabric propositions. Now this is something which most of you probably would be doing, some of you don't do it. But what we're talking about is that create the structure of work on these lines. It's not that someone asks you so someone will get 3 propositions. No. Even if no one asks you, give it to them. You don't know from where business might come, from where you might tap in that business. You need to reduce your development times, and of course a scientific way of cost calculation, coming back to that IE aspect. Everyone knows exactly what we're talking about, right? And then manufacturing. You need to reduce buyer involvement to a minimum. I'll give you a very good example for reduction of buyer involvement, and why I'm talking about reduction of buyer involvement is because let's think of the buyer as coming to us, vendors, as going to buy a holiday tour package. Okay? If I walk into a company that is selling tours, holiday tours, I will expect the gentleman or the representative over there to give me a package of 3-4 options within a budget, which is our cost, and then we expect certain services to be delivered to us, right, within that cost, in the right time, right quality. If we pay for a 5-star hotel, we're not going to be happy if we get 2-star service, right? So now what happens if we go to this holiday and we don't enjoy what's happening, we really don't even care of what happened behind the scenes. You know, shipments did come, fabric didn't come, buttons were wrong, matching, there was a problem in color matching, shade banding. Who cares? Does the buyer care about that? Right? He cares because we make him care. You know, we force him into the process. But what we need to concentrate on is minimizing his involvement in the process, and that can only be done by being flexible and taking ownership of your process. The third aspect of the paradigm shift is opportunity. Adaptability, which comes from flexibility, is to change what the evolution taking place. It leads to opportunity. I'm sure you agree with it. The more flexible you are, the more avenues open for you, right? The current manufacturing system demands flexible systems, and these, of course, in turn lead to opportunities. And this, the crux of this, is quick response merchandising. So how can we be flexible? And we have this rising pool of opportunities, but how can we be one? This is the result. You have to be one with the customer, and be one with the buyer. This should be your motto. I would say take a snap of this, print it out, and put it in front of your cubicles or wherever you sit. Because this, if you get this, you will get it every single time. You have to be one with the customer. Being one with the customer is to just understand the customer in every aspect, and to follow that understanding into your processes as merchandisers. Similarly, be one with the buyer. Understand what the buyer needs, why he's talking about what he's talking about, and don't act as if, you know, he's being reasonable, how can he expect this to happen? Well, if you don't do that, someone else will. It's very simple. So, how can you do that? Through your thought, through your processes, and of course, translating those thoughts and processes into action. Now, when we talk about post-manufacturing merchandising, we've understood the background, we've understood there's a world of opportunities waiting for us. So let's get back to the core of the topic, which is post-manufacturing merchandising. Presently, it's all of you know it's a service-oriented function. Merchandising is a service-oriented function. And I've given the whole breakup of how the merchandising done, and I'm not going to touch the previous. Let's just come to the bottom bit of it, which is post-production tasks. Traditionally, post-production tasks consist of final inspection offering, shipment follow-up, payment follow-up, file closing, and that's about it, right? That's what we all do. Now, my question is that how do we analyze the customer and the buyer behavior at this post-production phase? Because we have to understand them. We've talked about being flexible, but how can you be flexible if you don't even know what he wants? How can you do that? So my question is, how do you analyze the customer? How do you analyze the buyer? He's just sending us tech packs. Customer we have no idea about. Who is going to walk into a store and say H&M in London? We don't know. So how do we analyze him? Think?
Bestseller products.
Sorry?
We can find the best sellers of whatever we ship, the best sellers.
The best sellers?
From there we can design and give them a new input.
Yes,
Go
best
to their websites.
Yes. Buyer research, you mean to say? Yes, exactly. So, research, robust research and feedback mechanisms. Now, if you look at this, robust research would also cover pre-production or pre-manufacturing, and feedback mechanisms is post-manufacturing. So, it's something that encompasses the entire merchandising cycle, this whole process. Now, the current scenario is, this is our motto, no news is good news, right? All of us. We send a shipment, no news, wow, perfect, sab theek ho gaya, right? So if you receive a good order, receive a repeat order, so then we can assume that it was good, right? Till then we're in the dark. There's this black hole of indecision and not understanding what's happening. And then if the buyer reverts with comments, then we realize, okay, we did wrong. And then we'll be like, see, I told you that fabric had problems. You know, that's what we do. And if it's via a buying agent, then God bless us. Because we really, we have no idea. There's such a huge divide between the buyer and even us as manufacturers. So there's no way, that we can even sneak our way behind this buying agent and get to our buyer, correct? Right? So now, and there are a few people who actually do solicit feedback, and I'm not talking like through the top of my hat on this. I've actually done a research and we've come up with analysis, and many of the factories actually do solicit feedback. But the problem lays in that when we do something right, then we'll invite feedback. And we feel that we have done a really good order, we'll invite feedback. But when we know that we have buggered up, sorry for my language, but we would never, we just hide our face and we'll just expect, like, okay, let it go. We'll put it under the carpet. That's what we do usually, right? Yeah. So what we need is a structured feedback system. And this robust or structured feedback system needs to be incorporated at our post-manufacturing stage. I'm going to tell you exactly where. So you have your final inspection, your shipment, your payment, everything going on as it is. And after the payment follow-up or during this time, that is when you should ideally ask for feedback, ask for rating as a vendor, as a manufacturer from your buyers. Do you agree with me? Because that's the point when you've done most of your work and whether good or bad, now the cat is out of the bag basically. And then you close your files. So it's very important that this file closing issue takes place after feedback is garnered from the buyers. Now feedback definitely puts you in a vulnerable position. I mean, who wants feedback? Because it opens you to criticism and it just opens a whole can of worms that no one wants to open. Right? Do you want to hear that, God, you did a horrible time, I'm never going to give you an order, done, bye. You don't want to hear that, right? But honestly, even if you've done a really bad job at your particular execution of an order, if you do ask for feedback, that shows that you're willing to improve. So maybe if you did really spoil the entire thing, that feedback mechanism might still be your saving grace. So you should not be paralyzed by feedback. I'm using the word paralyzed because we fear it, absolutely. Use it to drive change within your organization. Take the feedback as constructive feedback. And this driving change will make you better, faster, and smarter. Buyers, they're on a constant cycle to meet new trends. And it's only when you get feedback that you understand, that we review these trends. And this constructive criticism actually even helps the buyer as well as us. Because imagine if you're asking for a feedback and many times it's not your fault. Many times you don't get approvals for 1 week, 2 weeks. The buyers are on a holiday in entire August, and you're sitting over here and been expected to send a shipment. So when you have that feedback, they will also understand what they are doing wrong or how they can improve their processes. So it's a two-way street. So that's so when we talk about feedback, of course it's critical to maintaining a capable workforce, and the focus areas of feedback is not only the merchandiser. No one is targeting one particular merchant who's executing an order. It's about getting feedback from an individual, of course, from a team, because you have a merchandising team altogether, and then you have the management performance. As a company, how do you perform? So you can structure your feedback on certain or these 3 levels and then take it forward. Now this feedback, how do we do it? We can do it through surveys, questionnaires, customer visits, complaint systems, focus groups. These are all the ways that we can get feedback. And I have a few, I've created some formats for you. You can take them if you like. Now the impact of feedback, first of all, is to solicit, to analyze, and to leverage. You've got the feedback, you've got it, you've asked for the feedback. But what do you do with the feedback? You have to analyze the feedback, because unless you analyze it, you would not understand what exactly to get out of it. And once you analyze this feedback, you get certain action points or plans or some kind of thing, you leverage that feedback. So the impact of feedback mechanisms is to offer value propositions at all stages. Once you understand what the buyer wants or what the customer wants, that is when you can offer value propositions. You have real-time adaptability. Now suddenly, as everyone knows, is that trends are changing so quickly. You have buyers working on one month, one season. You have buyers working on 3 months a season. Gone are the days of 6 months to 1 season. So the real-time adaptability is what you can get with feedback. It's a healthy, lean supply chain. Everyone's talking about supply chain. Of course, it's critical to being profitable and creating value. And the most important thing you can do is, most of you are on ERP systems. You can integrate this feedback into your system. As I said before, order closing. You have the order summary feedback, which is a format that I have. You can link it to your ERP software, and that goes into your file closing mechanism. Now, once you have closed the file, you've got the feedback, you put it in the file, how can you link it to the merchandiser? You've done a brilliant job. You've got amazing feedback from the buyer, but how can you link it to how you have performed as a merchandiser? Of course, there would be someone getting great feedback, someone getting horrible feedback. So you can link it to your KPIs, that the employers can link those particular things to how you have performed as an employee. That in turn comes to your incentive systems and to your remuneration. So whatever you do actually comes back to you. It's not kind of dissolved into the process. It's all documented. Now, let's analyze the 3 stakeholders that we have in this process, is the customer, the buyer, and the manufacturer. Okay? Because we know that we need feedback, but unless we understand the views of these 3 stakeholders, how are we going to go about it? So the 3 stakeholders, the customer, the buyer, and the manufacturer. The analysis begins with a very simple objective, is to understand the variables that can add value to our manufacturing process from the perspective of the 3 stakeholders. And again, this is all related to merchandising. So we are going to adopt a reverse order of analysis, starting from the end consumer. So we understand what the end consumer wants, then we understand what the buyer wants, because the buyer wants exactly what the end consumer wants plus something extra, right? And we as a manufacturer, how do we incorporate this analysis into our merchandising functions? So the end consumer is the impact of the consumer's perspective on our merchandising functions. Your motto should be to make the customer service a profit center. This is the buzzword. This is the motto which you should do. And what is this customer service? This is the merchandising function. You have to make merchandising a profit center. And you have to understand the pulse of the market, and with timely offerings, anticipating the trends by adapting relative seasonal research and creating brand-specific offerings. As I said, for example, brand-specific offerings, you said that you create a seasonal research that you give to every buyer, correct? Now, for example, you're working for Gap, and then you're working for some, probably say a very value-added buyer, say Balmain, right? Now, Balmain makes like 30 kg garments. That's the amount of value add that they do, right? So will you give the same research of a wash denim that you would probably give Gap to Balmain? You would never do that, right? You have to adapt it to exactly what the buyer wants, right? So that's what we're talking about, brand specific offerings. Again, coming back to the flexibility and the agility, and this all leads to continuous improvement. The first tool that we are talking about, how do we do it, is the three main questions to understanding your customer. I'm talking about the end customer, is why do your customers need you? And how do you get that? By what you said. Identify your USP, your unique selling proposition. And how, very simple, you must write these words down. Customers will buy from me because my business is the only ... Once you analyze the sentence and you fill it, you will understand what your USP as a vendor, a manufacturer is. And that, once you understand what is something that only you can deliver, you leverage that information. And you always project that in everything that you do. The second thing is, what do you know about your customers? Who they are, what they buy, and why they buy it, right? Again, a lady said that we can go to their website and we can do research. That's one of the aspects. When you go to the website, what do you understand? You understand the look, you understand the trends that they're going, you understand what kind of a market profile, the customer profile that they are targeting, and depending on all that, you tailor your service offerings. And the third is the customer's current supplier. Who they are, is the customer happy, and benefits of buying from you. This is the number one tool to understand your buyer. After that, I've created a little checklist, which is again here. These are 10 questions that you as a merchandiser, before you start on any new account, when you get a new account, you should analyze your customer from these 10 perspectives. Who they are, again, what do they do, why they buy, why do they buy, when do they buy. Okay, of course you have seasons, so you can accordingly tweak your processes. How they buy, buying power, what makes them feel good about buying, what they expect from you, what they think about you, and what they think about your competitors. This soft copy is available. Coming to the second stakeholder is the buyer. Now we're going to, what is the impact of the buyer's perspective on merchandising? This is even more relevant than what the customer understands, because of course understanding the customer is very good, but who is your point of contact with your organization? It's always the buyer. So you have this person who you have to understand, and understand what does he want and how can you improve your processes with his requirements. So for this, I'm going to invite Mr. Hemant Sagar to give a little insight from the buyer's perspective and on expectations from an exporter. So what does a buyer expect from exporter? So Mr. Hemant Sagar is going to talk.
Well done, Megha. First of all, it's I think the first time in my life I'm being presented as a buyer, because all my career I just thought that we were a brand or a fashion design company. And in fact, with time I painfully had to realize that what a designer actually does is pre-merchandising for himself. When we look at the design department in the factory where we create our collections, they have such exact recipes for exactly all the ingredients that they want for a garment that it is a kind of a pre-merchandising. And all we want is common sense from the factory. So the interesting part is that we are the designers and we're also the manufacturers. So my biggest client is myself in this case, because we're manufacturing it. And it's an interesting proactive procedure towards the client to make him understand what he's looking for also, because they look into our collections and we kind of have a pre-assorted proposition for the client. LHX is the lower part of our factory in which we manufacture for clients, and we also have our merchandising department. And is in the same time, as I just said, the manufacturer of our own ready-to-wear department. So a part of the production for these for clients is made, if they're in bigger series, in the factory itself, and has, of course, merchandisers to go with it. Whereas if it's more select, it goes into the sampling department, and it's just small series where we manufacture. So what I'm trying to tell you is that it's a boutique factory in which we have very small series sometimes, but the normal production series would be anything from 300 to 1,500, in which we're comfortable and in which we can actually excel a kind of a very personalized production. We make no difference at all, because now, as you might have known, we have started a collection for India, which is being sold only online, started just about 2 weeks ago. So we make no difference of quality between the local and the international client, and have noticed that there is a certain kind of a pressure when we sell sometimes, when we supply sometimes to local clients, that the internet has brought in such a difference of appreciation of the product today that we are obliged to cater something which is of international quality, respectlessly whether it's being exported or produced for the domestic market. A thought that I've had, and I wonder if it's true, is that things have really changed over the last 15 years since the quota times. Some of you must be remembering what it was like to be working under quotas, where actually the factory didn't have to think of anything at all. You would get the total surveillance of the product would come from outside, and all we had to do is have karigars to actually sew the product, and that was it. And there would be total merchandising, from the merchandising all the way through to production, surveillance, quality control. Everything was taken care of by the client to a certain extent. So what I'm trying to say is that the structures and the systems and procedures that we had at that time need to be taken care of by ourselves, and in fact they are fine. What makes the whole procedure so different today is that we have to approach the client ourselves and cater to him directly, and the merchandiser has a really pivotal position in this and has to actually be the person who will be translating all the demands, as Megha was just explaining, of the client to the factory and vice versa. And this is where, in fact, sometimes you have the feeling that the personal character of the merchandiser really plays a role, that there's a lack of transparency, of communication, that the person is probably just doing it to get the check in the end of the month and doesn't have a real understanding of what this client actually wants, what kind of there is nothing as generalized fashion. Fashion, as you know, the whole business is nothing but different niches, and each client has a different perspective. And sometimes the same product in two different price ranges is radically different just because of that. And even if they are actually having a same cultural background to all of that. So this merchandiser who plays an active role of an ambassador of the factory and at the same time receiving the orders from the client has this extremely important position in which he has to be extremely communicative in two sides, and that is something rather rare to decide. Also, what many people don't understand, I think Dr. Archana, is that her name? This morning said that 65% of all production problems could actually be resolved before they even start with pre-production brainstorming. So this actually means that it's 100% the job of the merchandiser, who has to be pivotal in this position. So that is basically what I wanted to tell you. The rest of it is all kind of logical, to have checklists for all your different quality needs, updates on new developments, providing calendars, and obviously the real basics, which to me are sometimes a real discovery, because my last merchandising departments were only called so. They were in fact living catastrophes. Punctuality, accountability, responsibility, reliability seems to be obvious, but I think is not always respected. Back to you, Megha. Thank you.
Thank you, Hemant. Thank you for some insights. So now we know exactly a little bit of what the buyer thinks. Now, coming back to I'm going to summarize the buyer's perspective, is that we need proactiveness in terms of technical inputs. preventive action-oriented thinking, and robust follow-up. That is exactly resonating what you said. We need cost-conscious offerings, which lead to in-depth fabric research, trim research, sourcing, and again we come back to our supply chain, right? Consolidating our supply chain all over. Then we talk about feedback should be reflected as improvements in quality, product, and execution. Sorry to interrupt. Slide below. Because I think you need the slideshow rather than seeing my face there. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so feedback should be reflected as improvements in quality, product, and execution. Now, again, through feedback, you can create this vendor rating system. Now, first of all, you're inviting yourself to feedback. So the buyer rates you as an exporter. But you can, in turn, invite or give feedback to your vendors. Then your fabric vendors, your trims, accessories, etc., etc. All the vendors in your supply chain, you can create a system of feedback and give them ratings. So at the end of the day, you understand what kind of offerings those particular vendors can offer, right? So you go to the correct vendor who can give you the correct offering, rather than just going to a vendor and getting surprised at the end of the day. So again, this encourages healthy competition, not only internally, it will like between merchandisers, between departments, but also with your vendors. So that makes them, on the edge of their seats, that they know exactly that, just because they're getting an order today, it's not necessary that they're going to get the same order tomorrow if they don't perform. Now, you again, coming back to the ownership and the accountability aspect, and a detailed input on buyer priorities, functioning, and SCM requirements. And another aspect is to understand the brand's vision and mission. What Mr. Sagar spoke about, bridging the gap between what the buyer wants and what actually this merchandiser sitting in an export house is doing to create the product, is to understand and to align yourself with the brand's vision. So for example, if someone says that they want to create sustainable fashion, right? So you're talking about organic cotton, or you're going to talk something. So you have to engineer your entire supply chain to what the requirements of your particular buyers are. You can't just be sourcing from certain vendors who have no idea about organic cotton growing or sustainable practices when you're catering to someone who lays a lot of emphasis on that. And again, you can create a system of prompts for retail feedback that, again, this point was picked up, that how good did your styles do? Now you send a shipment, but does it make any, do you even care that it's sold well, or it sold really well, or it really didn't work at all? So if there is some aspect of a retail feedback that can be asked from the buyer. Of course, we're not asking for their sales percentages and, total numbers, but definitely like three months down the line or 6 months down the line, when you send a shipment, you can create a little format and say that, could you just let us know how the goods did? So what you can understand is that you can understand the trends of what kind of products are coming to you, what are selling well, and you can again alter your business according to that. So if you know some kind of business is not doing well, so it's going to be dead in about 3-4 seasons. If it's not selling now, it's not going to sell properly after 1.5-2 years. So you might as well be flexible, agile, anticipate that change, and again alter your offering. So that kind of a retail feedback is what can you as merchandisers ask for. Now you can also create internal feedback. Now for example, if a merchandiser, most of us know that like you have a PD merchant and then you have a production merchant. So now if at the post-manufacturing stage, all this feedback and etc. is being garnered, how does the PD merchant know what this post-production merchant has done? You have no idea, right? So the next time you start an order, we are reinventing the wheel again. So there has to be an internal feedback system so that a person who gets feedback, you can at least give it to the person who is going to create new research and new developments. That's what this is all about. And then you have to create external feedback and rating systems. Again, this is coming back to your vendor rating systems so that their performance can be controlled. Again, I have an example of this order feedback form. If you wish, you can take a copy of this. Certain additional tools that you can use to understand how to analyze the buyer's perspective is order execution reports filled by the merchandiser, and these are like exporters' archives. For example, if something went wrong Do you create an archive for that? Do you learn from the mistakes? Someone leaves the organization, someone new comes, you just don't know what happened, right? Because it's just some vague ghost who was here before and he did this and that was the end of it, right? So to create all of this just gets rolled into one big sustainable system. Now coming to the third aspect, which is the manufacturer. So we're going to understand the impact of the customer and the buyer's perspective, and how do we learn that feedback to us as manufacturers. So this is like really important for us, because everything is very practical and something that you can apply in your work. So I'm going to invite a guest speaker, Mr. Aditya Singhal, to please join us and give us a few insights on the variables that add value to the manufacturing process, but from a manufacturer's point of view.
Thank you, Megha. So I'm Aditya, and so the company which I run is called IML Jeans. I'll give a little bit of a background about this company. It actually is in the business of tailor-made jeans. So the entire flexibility aspect is about as extreme as it gets, because only one product comes out at a time in one style. The USPs are to do with the quality of the product, the design flexibility, the overall personalization elements which could come about here. And we manufacture as well, we retail as well under our own brand name, and we supply both in India and overseas. Using our experience in setting up the entire manufacturing system in this particular mindset, we found that you have to start first with an engineering mindset. You have to start with actually finding the solution to the problem. So when a buyer actually comes to you, you need to understand what is the solution that they're actually asking for. Now there it could be what the customer really wants, which is to do with understanding the consumer, which is to do with research. Then it comes to the buyer in terms of how do you optimize the buyer's product offering to their consumers, which could be to do with cost savings, which could be to value additions and whatnot. Then it comes down to the factory, wherein you have to make sure that every single aspect of the production process is first looked at as a solution before going into the industrial process. So how do you get that one product perfectly at that time, and what is it that you can improve there? And then you focus into the industrial system of scaling up, and how do you then reproduce that correctly without compromising on the quality. When you come to the value addition part, I would again go back to understanding your consumers the most. And within going one step beyond just trends, you have to understand lifestyles. Lifestyles is something which unfortunately you can't just get from trend forecasting. You have to go a couple of steps deeper. You have to yourself be very aware of what's happening globally. And it's probably, you can't get away saying that I'm in Delhi or Gurgaon or I'm in Jamshedpur. You have to know what's happening in Paris today, in London today, in Milan today, and you have all the tools to do so. I'll give you an example. As recently as about 4 or 5 years back, the denim jeans, especially for women, have been under massive threat, so to speak, from yoga pants. There was a jegging phase, and then there was a yoga pant phase. And the reason was because of a lifestyle change. The lifestyle change was that you wanted to become healthier, so you used to go to the gym more often. You would go and attend your yoga classes. I'm talking more from the Western standpoint of view. And you decided that you didn't want to carry a change with you. So you wear something which is athletic wear, and you come out from your gymnasium actually wearing the same thing. And you coordinated your wardrobe accordingly. Now therein, it's got nothing to do with what colors, it's got nothing to do with what materials, it's to do with a lifestyle change. This is where the adaptability and flexibility element comes in. So your machinery then accordingly has to be flexible, you have to be able to scale up, and in most cases you might just have maybe a few weeks, if not months, to scale up and be flexible. This is one of the places you can value add in a massive way to the buyer and to the consumer by actually knowing exactly what the trends are. The other part is coming back to what Megha said, was ownership. Every single member of your facility needs to take ownership of the entire production process beyond just what their daily tasks and chores are. So it could be to do with ownership of the quality, it could be ownership of raw materials, ownership of delivery times, and it's always better to work backwards in this case so that you make sure that everything is done accordingly. One of the reasons why there is so much of bitter communication which sometimes can happen between manufacturers and buyers is actually setting the expectations right from the first day, and actually having a system of talking to the buyers on a regular basis, so that they understand what are your limitations, they understand what are your strong points, and you understand what is it that they're seeking. It requires a very open, transparent communication. The worst thing you can do is actually hide. And the reason I'm saying that's the worst thing is because if they know that you're sincere about every single part of it, you will know where you can value add for them. They will tell you where you can value add for them. The other part, the other element which you can do, amongst other things, to add more, something beyond just the value, but you could say is, on the design side, making sure that the design actually is conforming to those consumer trends. Now, in that design side, I'm not talking about actually sitting in a design room, but actually having functional design. Again, there's an engineering element which comes to it. The cell phone industry got revolutionized actually by functional design to start with, and then it moved further into more conceptual design. Here as well in India, the strong point is we have very, very good designers which are coming up, and now they're finally getting the flexibility of challenging things. The internet has given them also a place to showcase those designs. At a manufacturing level, if you embed design as a part of the manufacturing process, and I'll explain to you how you can do that, it is very, very imperative, and that's how you actually add that craftsmanship quality to or that look to that product. So it looks the perceived value then suddenly enhances. One of the ways is actually making sure that all your people, or all the stakeholders in this case, understand the design part of it. All of us have some little bit of a design element or a designer in us somewhere. So the idea is that how do you take it forward and you take ownership of the design of the product. Once you do that, you know that at every single stage the product comes out, you know what to check, you know what to see, you know what to expect, and you know if something is amiss, then that we need to head back there and fix it. I can give you some examples from my own company, a couple of things that we do. We're of course a small setup, so we do have more flexibility available to us, but we retail through stylists. Our stylists actually go and sit with the customers and understand what they want. We actually make them a part of the quality control process. We actually make them touch and feel the product and actually see, okay, do you think that this is suitable to what a customer would wear? We actually decided that we will not just relegate this section to one person or one department, and that we frequently would have quality checks at every step on the way. So using a poke-yoke system, but taking it forward on a smaller setup, we decided that this is going to be about as lean as we possibly can get. It delays your timelines a little bit, but that way we ensure that the product that comes out is absolutely perfect every time. Amongst the other things that we decided to employ at IML was that the kind of raw materials that we would use, we purposely would make sure that they're actually different. So the denim that we would use, you would always find that one product, or we would commission that one product which has something different about it. And when we offer that to the customers, whether that is to the buyer and whatnot, the buyer then can perceive it, whether it can value add for them. So it goes back again to what Megha was saying, that try and have a lot of options for your customer. It could be various price points, it could be at various design levels, it could be whatnot, and again it ties in a holistic manner to what your consumers actually would want. Consumer research again is super critical in this phase as well. So this is a little bit about from the buyer's perspective, and I'm going to give the mic back to Megha. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now you've got some insights from how we can practically implement the feedback that we get from both the other stakeholders in the process. So first of all, we need to optimize the service-oriented functions of the merchandiser. You need to be quick, you need to be positive, consistent. Customer is always right. Customer is the king. And you need to over-deliver. That's the buzzword. You need to over-deliver. You can't just doing something is not enough. You have to be go over and beyond. Clear direction to the operations team. When you understand what the customer wants, what exactly the buyer wants, you can give a very clear direction to your production team, to your operation team, and all they need to do is then execute that, right? Otherwise, there's no ambiguity at all in what can be or what should be done when you process a particular style. You need to refine your value stream by focusing on the value creating processes for the customer and the buyer. Now, till now, we're already always talking about, again, value stream, because this is the crux of the matter in today's manufacturing environment. And of course, this will lead to improved quality systems, as both the expectations of the customer and the buyer are well researched. So you really can't go wrong. A very important point is that you will increase transparency by eliminating bias in dealing with vendors. I'm coming back to the vendor rating point, that when you rate your vendors, the vendors that you work with, if you kind of rate them, you would know exactly why does one person get one. Otherwise, we have this very dirty underworld in the export industry of commissions, cuts, and we will never trust the supply chain guys. We never trust the at least the fabricators. So of course we all think something's going in someone's pocket. But if we create the system of feedback, everyone's on the same platform. It's transparent. It's very clear. And of course, when you take ownership of your process as a merchandiser, you maintain the momentum right till the end. So it doesn't kind of fizz out once you give the file to the production merchant and he's just, after the production guys, and it just gets shipped and then you just like sigh with relief and you're like, oh my God, it's done. No, you handhold till the very end, till you get the feedback on how you performed. You close the file only then. And a very important part, and I think most of you will agree with me on this aspect, is nowadays that the buyers are very young. Most of them are not really very technical. Right? They are a buyer, they're very important for us. Of course, we can't really say anything about them. But the point is that we are all standing here with 30, 40 years of experience in manufacturing. We have done it all, we have seen it all, right? And now the thing is that this young person comes and says that, gives you unreasonable demands and expects unreasonable things from the manufacturing process. And even if it is reasonable, what you need to do is you need to guide them with technical feedback, with proper reasoning, and that is very important, and a role that you can as a merchandiser play very diplomatically. You don't need to be bang in your face and say that, hey, you don't know anything, because then of course the business is never coming back to you. Close that door immediately, right? But yes, it's very necessary. I have a checklist which I would like all of you to take to your organizations, because if you do feel that what I've talked about is valuable for you and you're going to start some kind of a feedback system or some kind of an analysis of the various stakeholders in your process, you would need to understand how you go about doing it. The first thing that you can actually do is give this to all the merchandisers in your department, in your organization. This will, and once you analyze it, you will understand they themselves will give you an answer that do they need such kind of systems or do they not need it? Because once you start this will get the ball rolling. So I would really ask you that you evaluate your organization with this and you get the opinions from all the others. Now the other tools, as I said, which is creating a summary of what you can do, you have the internal factory feedback form. As I said, the production merchant has to give the feedback to the PD merchant of what's happened and what went wrong, what went right, etc. You have your vendor and external rating feedback. You have an order feedback, because through the order feedback you can get your buyer perspective, and then you have your customer research checklist from which you can understand your customer's perspective. So these are the tools and the formats that you can use. So you are free to please pick up these three options which are mentioned over there, and what you can tailor to your own company, this is something you can do at your own end, is you can create an orientation program on buyer expectations for new merchandisers that join your organization, so that whatever research that you have done can be given to the new crop of people who join your organization, so they know exactly what that particular buyer is all about. And as I said, you can link your all these enterprise the feedback to the enterprise ERP systems and the KPIs in turn. So flexibility is the need of the hour, proactive and aggressive merchandising, creating a level of trust and loyalty for repeat business. You need to consciously contribute towards sustainable supply chain practices, and you need to take 100% ownership of the process. And you must remember, it's all about building trustworthy relationships. It's all about the relation that you have with your buyer. You need to build them, you need to foster them, and you need to reap the benefits from them. And all of our activities should follow one central idea, is that relevance to the customer's demand, and you need to continuously create value, and you must aim to learn and evolve. Thank you. If you have any, we can do the question section right now.
Sure, sure.
Yes.
Please.
Question is to Mr. Aditya. You said that for a little while, in between, ladies' denim wear had threat from the athleisure, especially in the West, where physical fitness.
No, it's still under threat in that sense.
Fine, okay. So how exactly, throw some more light on this, that denim is trying to come back of its own, together this team, they mitigate this kind of risk from that, and B, in terms of, I would also want to know that how will it reinvent itself?
So again, it would have to come back to understanding how lifestyles are changing. So if, let's say, you're finding that athletic wear is becoming a very, very important segment, then somewhere denim makers, denim brands will have to start providing products which can be worn while you are maybe working out or while you're going outside. In this case, you have two segments. One is indoors and second is outdoors. You have to create products maybe through design, maybe through using more different fibers, different design techniques to create product lines which can be more adaptable in that setting. I think that the only way out is for brands to then look out there. The other part then is also for positioning. So you do have products which are coming out by various denim manufacturers which are positioned for more athletic wear. And many of them could be very niche products. So a couple of years ago, you had more the biker denims for a more traveling kind of a environment. You have denims which have come out which are more to do with sort of a blend of a cargo pant and a pair of jeans for hikers and for trekkers. And so forth. You have to start seeing that which are your markets, where are your segments there. That being said, you have to also see what are the limitations of the product, and you have to try and work towards those limitations. Why it was a limitation for women to a certain degree was because of the fit. The trends dictated that the fit for women shifted towards slims and skinnies. And so that was something which, when you have something which is much more stretchy, was able to sort a big element out. Jeans, from our own research for women, indicated that almost no woman really finds the perfect fit of jeans in the first go, and she really has to do a lot of research, a lot of trial and error, a lot of trying, and then when they want to go back to the store after a year or two to buy the same pair, it's not available. So that's why the trend sort of emerged there, due to limitations also which were offered.
Any more questions?
Sure.
Work with stylists.
Yes.
How do they feedback from your customers when she said about taking feedback on an individual basis because you're working with customers?
Okay, so we have a 3-tier feedback system. The first tier feedback is normally at the point of delivery, that how was the customer experience from that point. The second is after 2 weeks when the customer has worn the denim for about, should have worn the denim at least once or twice. How did they feel? What was their perception? And the third feedback system actually comes after 2 months when the customer has started washing their jeans and whatnot. Now this is to do with our product, but I think that going forth, a feedback system has to be multi-tiered. It cannot just be left at one time, because we buy the product for normally for long-term use.
How much will the customer return based on feedback and product?
In our case, returns are virtually, less than 1%.
And how many customers have come back to take a
Sorry,
How many customers have come back again to take a
our repeatability is more than 50% within the first week. And in fact, one of the reasons why we did a 3-tier feedback system is so that we understand where we can keep on improving the product. That itself, that sincerity itself led to a lot of customers liking or sort of appreciating what we were doing, and we were able to build a lot of good relationships with each one of them in that way. We really also one thing which I would say which is a part of all of this is that you have to stand by what you are making. So even as a manufacturer, you must be confident about your product. If you yourself are not confident, I don't really think you should be in the business of manufacturing here. Because if you stand by it, then you can actually have a very meaningful discussion with your buyer. And in this case, it goes with the feedback. So if the customer is giving you honest feedback, you know where you're going wrong.
Are we allowed to ask another question?
Yes, you can ask any kind of a question.
Staying with the same theme of feedback, you very rightly said, that no news is good news. Then you said that most of the exports, at least from India, in the apparel context, realms, it's happening indirect through buyers.
Yes.
Where there is very little in terms of feedback coming forth from the other end.
Correct.
And at the same time, you have halved a lot in terms of, the feedback has to be very robust and it is the way forward.
Correct.
So how exactly to have the buyer's perspective on the board, without, once we are not directly with them, is there anything to bypass it? At the same time, keeping the buyer's perspective on the board.
Correct. Yes, you very rightly did say that when you have this buying agent in between who is not really very forthcoming about, contact with the buyer, what I do feel is that what you can do, you can't force it. You can't force them to give that feedback. Definitely, it's not possible. But what we can do, we can, get them to realize the importance of buyer feedback and how such feedback can improve the services that we as a vendor would provide them. Now, if any service that we provide as manufacturers to a buying agency or in turn that would in turn anyways lead to the services that would reach the buyer. So it's all one and the same thing. So wouldn't a buying agency want to know feedback of how we did well or bad? I mean, it's interchangeable, what I would say. So for us, yes, a buyer is a buyer, and then we have this buying agent who we talk to every day and who badgers us. But the point is that if you do look from a manufacturer's point of view, the buying agent and the buyer are one and the same. And what's important for the buyer should, in all due respect to the buying agency, should be reflected with the same values. So we can convince definitely the buying agencies about the importance of such kind of systems and forms. And as I would say, it's just a matter of 7 questions or 10 questions in a very like a Google form point or a Survey Monkey survey. So it's not really that we're going to take up a lot of time of the buyer, and that's how we can convince them.
What steps did you take to guide online?
Well, it's quite a learning procedure because, in fact, the responsible is just sitting right here in the first row also. So it was a kind of a way of getting to know your own product from the other side. I came from a background in which everything was made to measure, and it actually, in parentheses, astounds me that merchandise that you would only be making in an engineered manner is now being made to measure. So it's again the contrary of the contrary. So it was getting to know your own merchandise from a different aspect of multiplication, and how it can be still sustainable and still have the same message as in the beginning. So
Retaining merchants helps because there is a lot of attrition rate and bringing in new merchants and then training them.
well, to tell you the truth, we only worked with in-house designers in this case, and we used them as, can I say that, Malay? Yeah, it was all a very kind of a close interrogation inside the company. We went online just about 2 weeks ago, and the last 3-4 months have been very, very tight between production and creation to be sure that we get the right product. So it was not really done with merchandisers, although in the ideal case, merchandisers should be like that. So it was a learning process.
Ma'am, you mentioned in the presentation that we should ideally minimize the buyer's involvement in the process.
Yes.
So with brands like Zara, whose USP is actually fast fashion. I personally think that such brands would, want to know each and every step and want to get involved in each and every step and know that, where is my product and at what stage and at what time probably I'll get it back. So how do you exactly propagate that, the funda of minimizing buyer's involvement, and how would a manufacturer actually do that? I'm really intrigued.
Okay, that's a good question actually, because the point is, yes, many buyers do want to know exactly what you're doing at every point of time. But do you think why? Have you ever thought of why they ask us and they want so much of involvement?
Probably because they want to know, like, they want to ensure that they get the product on time.
Yeah, and why do they do that? Because probably it's all about trust. The thing is that they don't want to be surprised at the end of, say, 3 months of production with a product that was something that they don't want. So in my opinion, that could be one of the reasons why they want to be involved at every aspect of the manufacturing process. Yes, to a certain level, it is required. You do need the buyer's involvement. But what my point is that there is a stage where we can, before which we can get all the information that is required for order execution if we work in a very systemized and structured manner as merchandisers or as manufacturers for them. There is no need for them to be involved at an operational level or problems that we face as vendors with our supply chain, because that's mostly where we involve them. Like, we have various, I'm giving you an example, like you have a shade banding issue or you have a problem of shades, and then you send them again for swatch approval and you're not able to get the exact shade, etc. This is one of the most common problems that we face. So we always go back to the buyer because we always do that, the 19-20 approval, right? So what I mean to say is that if we kind of control that in our processes, if we eliminate that, it can't be eliminated. We're not living in a perfect world. It will always happen when we do prototyping and stuff like that. But we need to understand, get all the information that is pertinent to an order way before, and then maintain a trust level. If we create that trust level and they trust us, I'm sure they're not going to ask you every single time. And just think about it. They don't use Zara, Inditex, they manufacture all over the world. We are not one of their only vendors, right? So do you think that they would be using the same systems with us as with others, except if they have their online ERP or those kind of systems which they have? That's a completely different issue altogether. But they have a very different kind of follow-up with us and with China or with someone else. That could also be the case. So it's all about, we as an industry in India, how do we change, how do we bring up and increase our credibility as suppliers? I think it comes down back to that to a very large extent. Yes.
The same point you were discussing.
Yeah.
You said it's because of trust.
Yes.
Buyer want transparency.
Yeah.
But don't you think there is compliance also
For sure.
behind that?
For sure.
Trust.
Yeah. No.
If you talk about Zara in particular,
Yes.
this is because of compliance. They keep a track of.
Absolutely, yes. I'm going to come back because it's a very good point that you've raised of compliances. We have so many buyers, we have so many compliances for all of them. But again, I'm not going very out of something which we can actually practically talk. So I'm going to talk about what really is the scene in our industry. Is that compliances also, why do we have compliances such as safety and then all these wraps and stuff like that we have, is because what we say is not exactly what we do. Why do they come and audit us every 3 months, right? Because if we were compliant, one compliance would have been enough. But they keep coming back to us again and again and again. And that is why, because they want to ensure whether we are still on track with what their standards are. And again, to be on track with their standards, why they check on us is again a trust issue. For example, you know very well from where the garment industry or our industry evolved. I'm talking about right from like 60s, 70s, 80s. Like 80s, you can talk, 80s and 90s was a turning point in our industry, right? So when you look at that time, you would have child labor, you would have all the things, even now you have sweatshops, you go to Udyog Vihar, you can have like small little karkhanas where they are taking out crores and crores of rupees. How do they do it? But it's not by being sustainable, definitely not. So the point is that the point is not us, the point is does our buyer wants products to be created in that kind of environment, because that's not aligned again with their brand's vision. So again it comes to trust. If we can create a perfect society where we have what we say is exactly what we do, and I'm sure that they would even remove the compliances, because it's a pain for them to set up audit teams all over the world. It's a pain for us to give that kind of expenditure in our budgets every year, that it's very expensive, every single audit. So don't you think that if we kind of just work on a trust issue, I mean, it's easier said than done, what I mean to say, but I think it would really trickle down at the end to that.
Any more questions? Well, thank you, Megha. Thank you, Aditya. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It was a fun session. Thank you.